let you know when we're ready. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Hang in there, dear brother. I'll be with you in one moment. And now for our disclaimer. First, our disclaimer, and then we'll move on. You're listening to Black Mental Health and Race. I am your host, MF Doug, and my co-host is Dr. Moore. We will be with you shortly. Please stay tuned for the disclaimer. And after that, we'll be right back after these messages.
Disclaimer, warning, the content will examine phenomena that some would find offensive, inappropriate, insensitive and triggering. This content neither suggests, nor implies, medical, or any other professional advice. This is a light-hearted discussion of a comedian and his therapist friend engaged in hypothetical conversation on Black mental health and race. In no way are the following views and content associated, or affiliated, with this, or any other, platform that this podcast may be accessed. All information and opinion are independent expression of free speech that a reasonable person may freely consider adapting or opposing in their own paradigm.
Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Peace to the God.
Peace to the universe. Welcome back, Dr. Moore. I am your host, MF Doug. My co-host is Dr. Moore. We do a podcast every now and then. You show us if you'd like us to come on more often. I am so grateful, Dr. Moore, that we've had an increase, an exponential increase, as we usually get from 3 to 6 listeners per episode. We had a 25 number, not 25,000, not 2,500, but we had 25 people listen to our podcast in our absence. Now, me and Dr. Moore, we have lives, we have things that we have to do, and we do this out of the kindness of our hearts, at the expense of our pockets, and the expense of our time. So we are appreciative that 25 listeners to us is like, I can only speak for myself, but I'll let Dr. Moore chime in. But 25 listeners to me, out of all of the things that you could have listened to in the last month, 25 people said they wanted to listen to us, Dr. Moore. Welcome back.
Thank you. And for me, I don't do it for listeners at all.
Speak on it.
It's just a friendly conversation for me with an old friend. And we just go back and forth with our perspective or our views or our thought processes about particular things, about things that we have evolved from, about places that we want to evolve to. And it's just an opportunity to really just catch up and just, process things. So for me, it's just a great opportunity, to catch up with an old friend.
Yes, sir. As a reminder to our audience, we have been having these conversations on and off for over, I don't want to say how long it's been. Because I'm only 28, brother. I don't know about you, brother, but I'm only 28 years old, brother.
Well,
I'm
it's
in the
been 28 now.
demographic.
Well,
I'm in the
and then
demographic.
there you go.
I'm a black male under 30, brother. I
There you
didn't
go.
want it in this world. Because
Hey, well,
after 30, it's over, brother. It's over.
hey, well, guess what, brother? We live in a time where you don't have to identify with your
Who you
age,
are.
with your
Unless you
sex.
transgender, that Trump said, no, enough of that bullshit. Yeah.
So be what you
Don't
want to
get
be.
me started, brother, because I promise to be nice. Now, we did a podcast, what, about 3 weeks ago, brother? Because we try to be consistent like at least once a month. But the podcast, I have to apologize publicly because I got a little tipsy. It only takes 3 drinks to get me tipsy. And I got tipsy, brother. And neither one of us liked the outcome of that podcast. We may play the first hour because I wasn't tipsy in the first hour. Um, any announcements, brother, or any comments before we start? You're listening to Black Mental Health and Race. I am MF Doug. My co-host is Dr. Moore.
No,
Proceed.
bro. No, bro. I mean, I was fine with the podcast. Again, is this a conversation between you and I? And again, whoever listens, blessings to them. Maybe they get something from it, maybe they don't. Um, but nonetheless, we do what we do, and you know, um, whatever. I mean, it's not like it's premeditated. So whatever comes from it is authentic, and it is what it is.
Okay. Hate to spring it on you lately, Dr. Moore, but I did find what I wanted to talk about. We, in the alternative, in the interim of just our reconnect, because we don't speak off air. We like to come to you fresh with new paradigms, new experiences, and just share them. That's the way we've done it naturally for all of these years. Why change it? Because before we had a podcast, that's the way we came to each other. Let's be open and honest with each other, and let's see if we can figure out. It's the meeting of two minds. Now we want to meet with the rest of the universe. We are thankful, but we're not looking to be the greatest podcast on earth. If it happens, we are eternally grateful and humble. And so we appreciate everybody that has come forth. Tonight's episode is called Pivoting because I couldn't find my notes. I thought the simplest thing we could do, Dr. Moore, was to start off with a simple phrase that may change your life forever. Now, before we came on air, we were talking about our own trials and how we identify with each other. And that's what we try to do when we reach an audience or reach out to an audience, is try to identify with your struggles and your experience. The name of the show is Black Mental Health and Race, but it doesn't have to be limited there. That's just the base where we want to start from. So pivoting is an idea or concept in which if something isn't working for you, maybe you need to let it go. Now, we were discussing, Dr. Moore, the fact that I am a perfectionist, a control freak, and a what was the last thing? Obsessive compulsive behavior disorder. That's where if everything isn't lined up the way I want it, I'm willing to quit. I don't care if it's people, I don't care if it's something that's going to benefit me in the long run. If it didn't work the way I wanted it to work, as Dr. Moore would describe it in his counseling, it's a self-sabotage, how we self-sabotage. This is not our first show on self-sabotage, but that's where we want to begin tonight. Give us a little introduction, Dr. Moore, into self-sabotage and what pivoting is as a tool.
Well, I think that's, well, we can call it self-sabotage, but it's also what we call dichotomous thinking,
Mm.
right? And what dichotomous thinking is, it is a all or nothing concept, meaning that if I don't have it all, then I don't want it at all. And that's very dysfunctional and it's unrealistic. It is a detachment from reality, because the reality is nobody has it all.
Hmm.
And so if you can't have it all, then you don't want anything. And if you're not careful, that type of thinking leads to suicidal thoughts.
Wow.
It can, I should say, it can lead to suicidal thoughts.
Definitely did in my case, so I agree.
Suicidal thoughts or suicidal behavior. Because you're trying to do something that's not realistic. And the way that you're thinking is not realistic. And it's not matched. You can't match that into reality. And so
Yeah.
I think that that's a little different from self-sabotaging, in that self-sabotaging is more you not feeling worthy. And so when you don't feel worthy, then you will self-sabotage.
Hmm.
So you could be doing something and you might get something that's great, but you don't feel like you're worthy of that greatness. And so you may do things to lose those good things that are coming your way. And
And
so
what
that's
was dichotomous thinking again? That's
and so
different from.
the difference between that dichotomous thinking and self-sabotaging is dichotomous thinking is all or nothing.
Hmm.
Meaning that if I can't have it all, if I can't have it this way, then I don't want anything at all.
Hmm.
You know, I want it all. I want it to look like this. My marriage should look like this. My wife should look like this. My kids should look like this. I should look like this. My home should look like this. My life should look like this. And if it doesn't look like this, then I don't want it. If I don't have all A's, then I don't want it. I can't accept the B. I can't accept the C. I have to have all A's all the time. I
Hmm.
mean, it's great if you can have all A's, but not having all A's is not the end of the world. And if you see it that way, then that's problematic. That's problematic thinking.
And our
That's
theme tonight is to pivot. If you see it that way, if you see the way that you want the world to be as the end all to be all, maybe, and we can't tell you what to do, we can't even give you advice on this show, but maybe, perhaps maybe, you need to pivot. That's the theme of tonight's show. Dr. Moore, I got like about 3 minutes of audio I'd like you to hear, and let's see if we can expound on it. Um, in terms of pivoting, we want to discuss cognitive behavioral or the narrative therapy that exists and the one that we give ourselves.
That's funny that you say that because when you was using the word pivoting, that's all I was thinking about with CBT.
Exactly. So let me play this. So my question that I asked was, what is involuntary regression to past lives or to past events? If you look at celebrities and they give you the story of their experiences, you go, wow, you slept in a car for 3 years, you did this, you did that. That's the way I want to do. I want to do it my way and succeed. But the truth about celebrities is that maybe for every one successful celebrity, there's 100,000 dreamers. In fact, in New York City, Dr. Moore, they used to tell us all the time, there are 8 million stories in the naked city. This is just one of them. What they didn't tell you is that that one story is the only one that worked. 8 million tries did not work. The person that you see as a celebrity, that you see as somebody to emulate, may not be you, may not be your calling. And so, what we suggest in our conversation with each other is pivoting. One of the critical things about getting back in touch with you, Dr. Moore, was the fact that I realize now how well you pivoted and how miserable I did. In fact, I was so OCD, I was so narcissistic and narrow minded that I set my goal to happen this way. And because it didn't happen this way, I have to quit, restart, quit, restart, quit, restart. And on that note, Dr. Moore, give me 3 minutes of your time, and then I'll let you expound. You're listening to Black Mental Health and Race. I am your host, Dr. Moore. I'm your host, MF Doug AF, and my co-host is Dr. Moore. Tonight's subject is pivoting.
In psychology, involuntary regression to past lives is not officially recognized as a clinical diagnosis, but the phenomenon is sometimes referred to under broader psychological terms such as dissociative experiences, fantasy-prone personality, or past life recall experiences. When it occurs involuntarily, it may be seen as a symptom within certain dissociative disorders or part of a psychotic episode, depending on the context. What is it? Involuntary regression to past lives refers to a mental or emotional state where an individual experiences vivid memories, feelings, or identity shifts that they interpret as coming from a previous life. This may include detailed visions, bodily sensations, language use, or emotional reactions tied to a person, era, or culture they have no logical exposure to. Why does it occur? Psychological explanations include 1. Dissociation. The mind distances itself from current stress, trauma, or emotional overload by escaping into a constructed identity. 2. Cryptomnesia. Forgotten memories resurface and are misattributed as new, sometimes interpreted as from a past life. 3. Fantasy proneness or suggestibility. Individuals highly imaginative or easily hypnotized may subconsciously create rich inner experiences. 4. Cultural and spiritual frameworks. People from backgrounds where reincarnation is accepted may process trauma or identity confusion through the lens of past life beliefs.
This is the one I want us to concentrate
Mental
on.
illness. In rare cases, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or dissociative identity disorder, DID, may include such experiences as delusions or alternate identities.
In your experience, Dr. Moore, is it possible in mental illness where you may be suffering from dissociative identity disorder, bipolarism, or schizophrenia, that you can pivot out of that? Is it possible?
I pivot out of them. You mean naturally,
Right,
just on your own? Just
right,
well, it would be almost impossible
right.
to do if if you can't recognize
Yourself.
that well, if you can't recognize what you're doing, you have to first recognize what you're doing,
Hmm.
right? You have to first recognize that, wow, the way I'm thinking is not normal and natural. Because a person that's schizophrenic, they don't see themselves as schizophrenic. Because the thing about a schizophrenic person is they can just see and hear things that other people can't. So it's a reality to them,
Hmm.
right? So so if you ask me, have I experienced? I've had a ton of experiences with people like that. I could be in a session with a person, and I'm talking to them, and in midstream of me having a conversation with them, they'll turn around, or
Mm-hmm.
they may turn their head and say, "I ain't gonna do that," and then turn back around to me and start having a conversation with me. So
Mm.
there's a conversation with me that's being had, and a conversation that's happening in their head,
Yep.
right? And so you can't you can't fix that on your own. Like, okay, let me leave here and let me just go, you know, fix this. You're gonna no, you have to see a doctor for that. It's like saying, if you break your arm, can you just fix it? No, you're gonna have to go to a doctor.
Hmm.
You know what
Unless
I'm
you
saying?
one lucky son of a
There's no such thing. There's no such thing as luck, because even if you're able to do something to your arm, right, and you're not a medical doctor, you just done something, right? But you haven't done what's medically needed,
Hmm.
right? So let's say you put it in a sling, right? And I know of people who have broken bones or have done certain things, and when that bone healed, it healed crooked,
Right,
right? And so they were never able to move that bone the way they used to be able to move that bone,
right.
right? And so when you see, that's why when you see basketball players and and football players and athletes, they go to the top doctors when something happens because they want to come back as close to 100% as possible.
Hmm.
So you trying to go up in your head and fix what's in your head, and you're not a doctor, you're not going to be 100%.
Wow. That is exactly where I want to go with this. When we're talking about pivoting, you may need some help pivoting. Speaking to the audience, don't just think that you could do what one person has done when the numerical statistics say that 99.8% of the people will fail. You can't think that you're going to be the one exception. Maybe, as I suggested to Dr. Moore, you're a lucky son of a bitch and you healed your arm. Whatever you did worked. I know there are people that talk about how they healed themselves from cancer, Dr. Moore. And when they went back to the doctor said, for by some miracle, you no longer have all of the indications that we had to indicate that you had cancer. And I don't know how you did it. But people will take that and go to the bank with it, Dr. Moore, that they will say, well, cancer can be cured. But 99.8% of the people with that mindset are going to perish. And they may not have to perish, but they have to get out of their own mind. They have to pivot from what they believe now in order to do that. So I brought up I don't know. Have you had any experiences with the phenomenon of involuntary regression, with people who are in so much stress in their actual reality of life, they regress back to a time when they had it going on or when they perfected something?
Yeah, yeah, I see that all the time, but not necessarily. I mean,
In a
some in a clinical.
beneficial way, right?
Well, well, I was gonna say not necessarily. I've seen it a lot of times, um, but not. I've seen it not only in a clinical perspective, but I see it in real life perspective, right?
Right. Because I
Um,
know I've seen it as well.
yeah, I mean, I know people that um, there are particular times in their life where they were quote unquote their happiest, or they may have been their most popular is, or they may have been the ish, right? And so they just stay in that time, right? The reality though is time doesn't go backward, it only goes forward.
Hmm.
So when you do that, all you're doing is regressing. You're not progressing, you're regressing.
Hmm.
You're going
Each
back.
other, brother.
You're trying to go back to a place that doesn't exist.
There's a movie, Dr. Moore. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's called American Pie. It's in Kevin Spacek, who's going through his own problems as we speak, legal and criminal, perhaps. Um, but the movie was called American Pie, and it's about this man suffering from a midlife crisis. He's 50 years old, and he befriends one of his daughters. His daughter is a teenager, getting ready to either graduate from college or is attending college. And the old guy that the Kevin Spacey character plays identifies so much with the teenager, and the teenager sees him better than the daughter sees him. The daughter sees him as just an old man. But her friend that she befriends for college is in total admiration of this guy. He's got his own house. He's got everything together, everything that she hopes that she will have once she finished attending college. They identify so much so that he starts smoking weed with the daughter's friend. And then he regresses back to he wants a Harley Davidson again so he can live back his old past life when he was 100%, when he didn't have a bald spot in the back of his head and he was the man, he had muscles, he started working out again. So involuntary regression is not just something that happens on paper. You can see it in somebody that you know. I mean, they're trying to relive a time when they were doing well. And sometimes that's going to work for you. But when it doesn't work, we're going to talk about the mental illness that occurs because we don't, and I'll let Dr. Moore speak to this more attentively, but we don't know exactly why people give up on reality and revert back to something that they're familiar with. But what we do know is that everybody else can observe that this person is talking to something that everybody else thinks doesn't exist. But in that person's mind, he is in that back involuntary regression mode. Dr. Moore.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you want me to say to that. I mean, the way that you just articulated that is I don't know. I mean, it's I don't want to use the word crazy, but it doesn't, none of that makes sense, right? In that if you're doing something and you're the only one that sees that what you're doing is, I guess it would depend on what it is you're doing. But it sounds like what you're describing is somebody who's trying to go back in time. If you're trying to go back in time, I mean, that in and of itself is regressive, right? And that in and of itself is unrealistic, right? Because you can't go back in time, right? So if someone wants to go back to a place, that they came from, that's problematic because you can't go backwards. You can only go forward in life. And so it sounds scary to know that you're stuck and don't know that you're stuck. And that's
Yes,
what it sounds like to me. It sounds like somebody who's stuck or who wants to be stuck in a particular place or wants to be stuck in a particular time. Well, then if you're not careful, you're going to become a dinosaur, right? In a time where, particularly in the time that we live in now. I mean, everything is fast, everything is quick, everything is
technology
moving.
changing so quick.
Right, right. And so, and if you pay attention to time, right, and I've always this is how I've always tried to live my life. I always try to live my life projecting it 5 years ahead of time, right? So I always look at my life and I say to myself, okay, where do I want to be 5 years from now, right? And I will work like I will work now like for what I want it to look 5 years from now. So I'm always trying to um, stay ahead of the curve, so to speak. But you're talking about somebody who wants to go backwards, not forward, but backwards. And I don't know how that's progressive, and I don't know how that could serve them, except for to be happy in their own head, right?
I'll give you an extreme, and maybe you can identify with it. People see homeless people on the street, and they're psychotic. I mean, their mentality, and this is just an extreme, and we're not diagnosing anyone, but just from your observation as a so-called normal person, you look at them and they got their ass out on the train and they shitting on the damn chairs on a public subway, and they feel absolutely normal and comfortable. But you know that this person is batshit crazy in your mind. So that's just an extreme of when you go into a regressive mode, how it's so detrimental to moving forward. Because you went back to a time when you thought that defecating on yourself was comfortable. You're not in this reality that the rest of us are facing or enduring. You have found a comfortable spot in something very uncomfortable, something very unnatural and normal to everybody else's view.
Yeah, but use the word involuntary, and you say involuntary regression.
Right,
So if it's involuntary, you don't really have any control of it,
right.
right?
And that's
So
what psychotic episodes are.
right,
I'm
because if it's
question.
it yeah, because if it's involuntary, involuntary means internal, right?
Right.
That's inside. So you are not consciously, you know, going backwards, but it's happening to you without your control. Now, the person that's on the subway, I think these are different mental.
States.
Uh, yeah, I think these are two different mental conditionings, right? Because to me, the homeless person or the person that's using the bathroom on themselves, I mean, that could be medical, but if we're just talking about it from a psychological perspective, that person might not be necessarily reverting back to childhood, but um, I think more of that utilizing um, Maslow's hierarchy of need, right? And
Mm,
so if I'm looking at Maslow's hierarchy of need, then I'm looking at, the bottom of the pyramid and the top of the pyramid. The top of the pyramid is is self-actualization, right? The
mm,
bottom of the pyramid is your basic needs, food, clothing, and shelter, right? And so you are not thinking about self-actualizing because you can't even get to the point of self-actualizing. That's not even a thought in your head. If
mm.
you're because you're here at the bottom, right, focusing on food, clothing, and shelter. Well, if you don't have food, clothing, and shelter, right, you don't have a home. So you don't have a home. So where you use the bathroom doesn't really matter to you.
Wow.
Right? That's only a priority for someone who has a place to go use the bathroom. Right? You
Mm,
can focus on, well, I can wait till I get home because I have some place to go use the bathroom. But the homeless person isn't thinking about, well, I'll wait till I get home or I'll wait till I get to, a place where I can go use the bathroom because there is no place. There is no place for him to do that. So any place for him to do that is any place for him to do that. Right? So he's just at the bottom of what Maslow talked about in his hierarchy of need. So he's not focusing on where he uses the bathroom. He ain't focusing on his clothing. He ain't focusing on the way he looks. None of that, because his basic needs aren't met. So he can't self-actualize to the next level.
so his whole narrative internally is different.
Yes, because what you are saying is normal is not normal for him. Because he can't focus on being nice or respectful to you, right? Because that's your normal. His normal right now is I got to use the bathroom, right? Or I need, or I need to eat, or I need to do X, Y, and Z. So I'm focusing on my basic need right now. And my basic need right now is not to make you comfortable, right? But is to use the bathroom or to, you know, he ain't worried about brushing his teeth or the way he smells
Mm,
or how he looks. None of his, you know what I'm saying? Those things are for people that are functioning from a high level. So you and that person ain't on the same level. So you looking at him and judging him, looking at him and judging him, you know, in a way that doesn't really make sense. But you don't know that it doesn't make sense because you're not the way I'm talking right now, you would have to understand it from that perspective. You have
mm,
to understand, you know, that clinically. And if you're not clinical, then you're not looking at things clinically, right?
right.
But I understand things and look at things differently because I psychologically I'm able to process what's happening with this person.
And most people aren't. Most people are just annoyed or
Why would most people? Most people aren't clinical.
hmm,
So you can't think clinically if you're not clinical.
hmm. And just to remind the audience, I wanted to stimulate the conversation by using an extreme, but there are other instances in which internal regression or involuntary regression occurs, and you may not even notice it because it's so close to normal. But a person may be, as you said, Dr. Moore, having a conversation with you, but he's also having a conversation with his head. Now, he may look up at the sky, but that conversation is very internal.
Right.
I'd like to read something else. Yes, involuntary regression can occur in several psychological contexts and can absolutely affect or sabotage progress in psychotherapy and future success in your personal life. In psychology, regression refers to a defense mechanism where an individual reverts back to earlier developmental stages in response to stress, trauma, or emotional conflict. It's not always about past lives. Sometimes it's a return to childhood like states or earlier psychological coping patterns. So, like if a person like Kevin Durant, in order to get back to making those 3-point shots or driving to the basket, he has to go back in his mind to where he was making that shot without even looking at it, without even thinking about it. I think they did that for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He had a person wasn't a psychic. I forgot what the person was called. You heard of him, Tony Robbins. And he has something called neuro-linguistic programming, which is basically, simply put, just a narrative that he put back into Abdul-Jabbar. And he told Abdul-Jabbar, he said, if you think back to when you used to make this shot, you can now apply it to when you're older and you can't do the things that you used to do, but you can put yourself back in a state of mind of confidence. But sometimes in that regression, what does happen is you're going to go through one of the many states that they brought up, but one that Dr. Moore is more familiar with is depression. When you do try to go back to a state of mind where you were confident and where you were doing things so right that you could not lose. I can't lose with the stuff I use. But that state of mind and your age may conflict so much that now you begin to realize, oh, I'm too old for this shit. It's not working out like I thought it was going to work. But that's when pivoting can backfire.
Well, I think the problem is what you're saying is what you're talking about is this Sigmund Freud's defense self defense mechanisms, right? And so you're talking about things like regression. Man, there are a number of them, but and you're just talking about this one right now with regression. But the problem is those things don't happen in your consciousness. They happen in your self-consciousness. And they come up because what your mind is telling you, your mind is trying to protect you. And so and what happens in that is these self-defense mechanisms that are already there in you, they show up in a way to protect you. Right. And so what happens in that, let's say you get into an argument, right? And you are thinking, I need to defend myself, right? And so what might happen is you might regress to your childhood and you might put up your hands to fight, as opposed to being able to articulate that or talk a situation through. You might regress to your childhood. But again, it's not those things, those defense mechanisms are not consciously, they are unconscious.
Right.
So when you start talking about like regression and things like that, those things aren't happening in your conscious state. Because if you regress and it's not in you and it's in your conscious state, then that means you're purposely doing that and you are aware of it, right? So you say, well, the '70s was cool. I'm gonna go back to dressing and and what was popping in the '70s,
Bell
right?
bottom.
Yeah, then that's different. But based on what you read, what I'm hearing you read and what you say, you are referring to Freud's self-defense mechanisms, right? And so it's like um, um, regression. I can't even think of all of them. Um, uh, um, what's another one of them?
3. What is involuntary regression to past lives called in psychology? Logical steps to approach these behaviors. Psychology. What is it? Why does it occur? And what are the steps to approach such behaviors and beliefs?
Press the button.
Involuntary regression to past lives is not officially recognized as a clinical diagnosis, but the phenomenon is sometimes referred to under broader psychological terms such as dissociative experiences, fantasy-prone personality, or past life recall experiences. When it occurs involuntarily, it may be seen as a symptom within certain dissociative disorders, or part of a psychotic episode depending on the context. What is it? Involuntary regression to past lives refers to a mental or emotional state where an individual experiences vivid memories, feelings, or identity shifts that they interpret as coming from a previous life. This may include detailed visions, bodily sensations, language use, emotional reaction tied to a person, era, or culture they have no logical exposure to. Why does it occur?
I don't know what button I pressed, brother, but I can't stop the damn voice now. The voice is in my head, brother. Finish your point, Dr. Moore. We're back.
No, I was just saying. Based on what I'm hearing you say, um, it you you are referring based on what I've heard you play and what you say. You're referring more to Freud's defense mechanisms, right? And so that's like regression, sublimation, denial, repression, projection. It's all those things. So what you're talking about is just one of Freud's um, self-defense mechanisms. And again, those things are internal and they happen in the unconscious, and they happen. Um, it's in a way that your brain knows you better than you, right? And so what your brain will do in the unconscious is it will create a self-defense mechanism to protect you. And so a lot of times when you see regression, is a person is in a situation and they're trying to protect themselves and they're not aware. And so regression will show up, right? And it's just a way of it's just a way that the brain is trying to protect you from a particular situation.
Right. I know people that I see in everyday experiences who are quite normal, brother. And but then you see something in them or you hear something from them. It doesn't even have to be behaviors in terms of action. It could be behaviors in terms of their auditory or the way they speak. Something that comes out of their mouth and you like, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound normal. Why is this person saying that? I think what is going on is they have this narrative in their head and they can't get it out. But one of the steps that you had given me was instead of just um, giving the end all to be all, is to take shorter goals that you can accomplish, and then you can say, I got that done, I got that done, I got that done. But if you take it all at once, you become so overwhelmed that you begin to disassociate with the reality going on around you. And not in terms of the extreme of homelessness, but you look quite normal. But now you start to say things out of your mouth that nobody can identify with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You are listening to Black Mental Health and Race. Sorry for that interruption, brother. I pressed the button to copy and paste something to you, and I must have pressed the wrong button. and I couldn't get the damn thing to stop. But we're talking about pivoting. How can a person we not be able to help the homeless person that's in an extreme form of regression, but we may be able to help you identify on your own self-analysis, self-correction. You may be able to identify with situations like before we came on the air, Dr. Moore, I was telling you about how I had it in my mind that I had to get a 4.0 and graduate with a summa cum laude in whatever I took. And I took that to Hunter College and I took that to NYU because that was my narrative. That was my internal narrative that I would not be successful with a 2.0. It had to be that I would graduate summa cum laude. And it didn't matter what the subject matter was. I wasn't being realistic. I had a narrative in my mind that seems perfectly normal. I wasn't psychotic, but it wasn't realistic. I was listening to my head instead of the reality of the situation I was in. I had no concept of this is difficult. This is not an easy subject. Let me take less classes. I had to take 4 classes every semester. That's 16 credit hours of work that I was taking in very hard subjects like mathematics, like engineering and science. And I was doing pretty good. But the moment a stressful situation came up in my life, like my father dying of cancer, my mother getting sick, and I had to return back to South Carolina to take care of her because they were just going to leave her in the hospital. And I said, this is my mother. I cannot allow her to die in a hospital. Her only wish to me was, I want to come home and die at home. Do you know that my care for my mother, she lived another 2.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
When they told her in the hospital she had maybe 2 months to live,
Mm-hmm.
I could not
Again.
accept that. So I dropped everything, including my job, including going to NYU, to make sure that what happened to my father, I wasn't there because I still had to finish out the semester. But my father called for me and said, I need you to come home. He's in South Carolina at the time. And I said, Dad, let me finish out the semester and I'll be right there. But he died before I could pass. And I went into this deep depression, brother. All of the confidence that I had, all of the regression back to a time when I was in high school and no subject matter could mess with me, now messed with me because they were outside determining factors that I could not control. I could not control my father getting cancer. I could not control my mother going into her health problems. I couldn't control my financial situation at the time. I just had to do the best I could. And the only thing that I knew to do was to go help my mother because she helped me. But that put me in this severe depression, brother. I, at one point, I did not want to continue. And it was so debilitating. I couldn't function anymore after I came back from those 2 traumas. And I could not pivot on my own. That's why I was telling people at the beginning of the podcast, you may need help pivoting, but a pivot is what you have to do. Everything that you learn may need to be unlearned, and you may need to take baby steps to accomplish the same goals. And you may need to stop looking at it from the perspective of everything has to be perfect. Maybe it's not going to be perfect. but achieve the goal. Focus on achieving the goal. See what the end goal is going to be. Dr. Moore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's no man is an island, right? So it's unrealistic to think that you are going to do everything on your own. It's unrealistic to think that um, things are not going to happen while you're on your journey. Um, Things are going to happen, and even if you don't know at the time that you need to quote unquote pivot, um, you just have to know that I'm not going to just quit, right?
Hmm.
Even if it's a halt, along the way. While I was in college, even with all the things I had going on, um, with my first semester flunking out, finding my way to get back in school. My third year of college, um, I completed my third year and came home that summer and caught um, a drug charge and was facing 30 years,
Hmm.
right? And so I couldn't even go back to school because I was incarcerated. I was locked up.
Wow.
I couldn't even go back to school, right? So I wasn't necessarily thinking pivot was not the word that I was thinking, right,
Hmm.
at the time. But so what I was thinking at the time was let me focus on the this situation. Let me
Hmm.
get out of this situation. Once I get out of this situation, then I can, focus on school.
Right.
It's not going to serve me that while I'm in jail to be thinking about school because
Hmm.
I'm not going to school.
Hmm.
I'm doing this. So I
Your whole
focus on
program got stopped.
yeah. So I focused on what I had going on then at that time. Once I was able to resolve that situation and come home, now I can focus on okay, I need to get back in school. What do I need to do to get back in school? And then once I get back in school, I got 1 year left. How do I get through that 1 year? You see what I'm saying? So, if we looking and saying in hindsight, oh, you pivoted. Well, yeah, you can call it that, you know, but
Easy to call it that now, right?
right. But at the time, you know, I'm just saying in life, you are going to run into obstacles, right? But it's not about the knockdown, it's about the get up, right? Because you're gonna get knocked down in life. That's what life will do. But it's all about the get up. And as long as you're willing to get up and keep going, you'll be all right. Because if life knocks you down and you stay down and you just blaming life, well, at some point you're refusing to accept accountability, right? Because at some point, even though life knocks you down, you still got to get up and you got to keep fighting.
Hmm. Yes, sir.
And
I think.
I'm not saying that's easy to do, but if your mentality is this is not easy, then you have already lost. Because if you're looking for things to be easy, then you really don't want it. In my assessment, if you want your relationships to be easy, then you know I think it's just a very shallow perspective about life. Life should be easy. Said who? I know surely the slave didn't say that.
Hmm.
We're not here. if the slave said, well, life should be easy, and because it's not, I'm giving up. No, he fought. They fought.
Mm.
You know, even if we want to look at white folks, right?
Mm.
White folks today are trying to, what you talked about earlier, they're trying to go back in time, right? Because guess what? They're saying this shit ain't easy anymore for us.
Hmm.
We need to make this easier for us.
Hmm.
This is hard, and we don't like hard, because what white folks like was not having competition. And as long as you didn't have black folks in the race, as long as you didn't have them on the court, as long as you didn't have them on the football field, as long as you didn't have them in education,
They can be
as long
stars.
as long as you didn't have them in anything, you know, we can buy houses, right? We can get bank loans. We can open up businesses. We can do all of these things if we don't have competition, right?
Hmm.
If we don't have DEI. Because if you're giving folks affirmative action and DEI, you're giving folks opportunities that they wouldn't necessarily have.
If we were back in the days.
Right. So let's get rid of that and make it harder for them and make it easier for us. Because if there's no affirmative action and there's no DEI, there's nothing forcing me to hire these niggas. There's nothing forcing me to do anything that I don't want to do.
Hmm.
And I only want to hire people that look like me. And I only want to live around people that look like me. And I only want to work with people that look like me. And there should be nothing wrong with that.
Hmm.
And that's why
That's
we're
a
in the
good
situation we're in.
segue, brother, because that is what we need to talk about. Because this wouldn't be a show about Black mental health and race if we didn't talk about the racial aspects of that regression. Not just from our perspective, but we have a new president, and I will give him the respect of calling him President Donald Trump, and I don't have to. A lot of people didn't call President Barack Obama; they just call him Obama. They didn't even put the president in front of his name. But um, one of the things that happened was when there's a new leadership, they're going to try to make changes that for the American people. We have gotten so far to the point of affirmative action, DEI, civil rights, amendments to the Constitution that have made white people stressful, that they can't get the same opportunities that they had when this was a racist country, when there was segregation, when there was no rights for Black people. And not necessarily that they want to go back to that, but they want to go back to when all of the things that we tried to do to correct history, a violent and destructive history that put certain people way behind in terms of civilization and development, in terms of culture, in terms of education, remembering that racism does not affect the individual like it affects the system. The system works, and that system is no longer working in terms of the numbers that white people are comfortable with. So they want to regress back to, but it's backfiring on them, brother. We have now a lot of white people being fired from their federal jobs because they can't even justify what they did for the last 5 hours. They can't put down. A lot of them had cushion jobs. A lot of them had cushion welfare, cushion opportunities, cushion bank loans. So instead of hurting us, we ain't never had shit to begin with. You're not hurting Black people by taking back all of these revisions, because the exception to the rule was the ones that benefited from affirmative action, from civil rights. The majority of our people Dr. Moore, are still suffering, which is why we need this podcast. We try to address the plight of the masses of our people that are suffering, because you and I as individuals are not suffering because we have some type of knowledge that's helping us.
Bro, I'm again, bro. For me, this is just a conversation between you and I.
Right.
Whoever listens. Um, I told you before, I'm not looking for converts or anything like that. I feel like this though. Um, when you talk about affirmative action, diversity, and inclusion, they are trying to paint the picture that affirmative action and diversity and inclusion is bringing in unqualified people, right? And so the only reason why they're in, not because they're qualified, but because they have these programs that let these unqualified people come in. Here's a problem. Major problem I have with this. Donald Trump comes in and fires everybody and brings in only the people that he likes, right? I don't. If that ain't fucking, you know, I
Affirmative action.
if that not only is it an affirmative action, but you talk about unqualified. I mean, who's determining their qualification? They created a program called Doge, and who qualified Doge, right? So you have
Department of General Efficiency or some shit like that.
yeah,
Your boy, I'm being facetious, but Elon Musk is in charge of that. And
right,
that's his Dogecoin. If you
right,
know anything about Bitcoin, he had a Bitcoin that he called the coin, DOGE. That
right,
coin, he made it to make fun of Bitcoin.
right. But I'm just saying. I'm saying that when they talk about diversity and inclusion and
Hmm.
unqualified people,
Hmm.
who determined that they were qualified,
Hmm.
right? Who's looking at their qualifications?
Hmm.
That's what's interesting to me, because if you're going in and you're saying that we're going to create this department of Department of Government Efficiency,
Right. That's the name.
then I'm typically that would be people who are auditors, who are professional auditors and things like that,
Hmm.
right? So who's determining what these people's qualifications are? They're just coming in and firing people at random.
Let's
And I
make
don't know.
America great again, brothers.
I mean, and I don't know what that means for Black folks, but I, you know, I don't know how that makes or this is making America great, right? And I'm just thinking about the Black folks that supported this, you know, and voted for
I'm
this.
laughing at the white people that supported
Yeah,
it.
but for anybody that supported it, I'm wondering, how are you looking at this as benefiting the country?
As my brother used to say, he used to mock Scarface, famous line. Look at you now. Look at you now.
Mhm.
We are killing our own future with regression. Isn't that ironic, brother, that we would start a podcast topic about regression and how we can end up talking about the regression of the United States. There was a Department of Defense or Department of, yeah, it's the Department of Defense group chat that got out into the public where they were discussing war strategy for either um, for Ukraine and Russia, and it's public knowledge to people who should not have even been a part of the chat. But that's when you have unqualified people in those positions. They couldn't even create a private channel in the Department of Defense, brother. This is the most secret organization besides the Pentagon that no correspondence, no internal information should be leaked to the public for the threat of national security. And somehow a meeting was open to the public in the Department of Defense. How about that regression, brother? How about that?
Progress, bro.
Progress.
It's progress.
That's a good word for it, brother. Good word.
Well, that's like doing slavery, right? And they say, well, how do we make slavery better? Well, we get slave patrols. That's how we make slavery better. So they get hired as slave patrols, and a couple niggas get free. And they say, well, how the fuck did that happen if we got the slave patrols? And so I see that as progress because you know, as much as they try to hold us back,
Try to
find a way to slip one in.
they're holding themselves back.
Yep.
So you keep it up. You keep it up, President Donald Trump. You're doing good, actually. You're doing very good. I hope all the best to you. Brother, have we wrapped up this subject? Let me say this, and I didn't want to just leave our subject matter. Pivoting is about self-assessment. You've got to create a position that's going to win. And maybe all of your internal thinking that you've had before is not working for you, but you've got to make that self-assessment. Maybe I need to rethink things. And maybe, just maybe, your pivoting is going to require professional help. And you better be humble enough or less narcissistic to accept the help when it comes, to pivot you back to reality. And that goes for us as individuals, that goes for us as Black people, and that goes for the United States government. You better make sure that what you regress back to don't put you in a worse situation than you're in right now. Dr. Moore.
Yep.
Take us home, brother.
I don't know that I can take you home, bro. But I think using the word pivoting and if that's what we want to entitle the conversation for tonight is pivoting. I think it's important to make assessments throughout your life, right? Make assessments throughout your day. See how they're working for you, and assess how maybe they're not working for you, right? And if it's not working the way that you want it to work, be flexible enough to make changes, um, where things can kind of start to shift a little bit for you, right? So that you can start to see some changes in your life. Um, look at what you're doing. Look at what you have done, and be willing to be honest with yourself about the progress that you have made and the progress that you have not made, and determine whether or not you think it's time to do something different, right? And if you need, help doing that, then definitely seek out, the help of a good friend or professional to assist you in doing that. But don't keep doing the same thing expecting a different result, because that is surely the definition of insanity.
Amen, brother. Amen. Before we go, let's have a few hot topics, brother. I wanted to discuss the celebrity deaths. Did you hear about the death of Gene Hackman and his wife?
I heard about it, but not familiar with it.
Kind of bizarre ending. I think the final conclusion was that Gene Hackman had a massive heart attack and died. And the wife, who was a younger woman, I think about 30 years, his senior, she freaked out and wound up dead in the bathroom, um, surrounded by pills. One of the dogs died too. Um, and Gene Hackman was what, 80 something years old? Um, I bring up his name because rest in peace, Gene Hackman. I thought he was a great actor. I loved him in the movie Crimson Tide. If you like military movies out in the universe, it is one of the best military movies you're going to see with Gene Hackman and Denzel Washington. Um, Rest in peace to Gene Hackman and his beloved wife, February 26, 2025. Gene Hackman was also the actor to French Connection, and another good movie I like Gene Hackman in was Unforgiven, one of the best westerns ever written. Um, it it compared well to the old classic westerns like um, I forgot, it's something about the seven. I forgot the name of that movie, The Fabulous Seven or something like that. It's a good old western, but Unforgiven was kind of up there with that. Gene Hackman's wife was Betsy Arakawa. She was an Asian woman, very attractive Asian woman. Um, Roberta Flack, February 24th, 2025, passed away. She wrote Killing Me Softly. It was made popular for our generation by the Fugees. The Fugees made Killing Me Softly popular again. But Roberta Flack, rest in peace. She was a singer, songwriter, and Grammy winner. George Foreman, brother. The great George Foreman passed away March 21st, 2025. Your thoughts, Dr. Moore? Did you
Um,
press a button that you can't get to stop to?
that I can't what?
Did you press a button? Or is that still coming out of my phone?
I don't hear anything. What are you talking about? What are you hearing?
A radio or a TV? Is it coming
No.
out of my phone? What do you think about the death of George Foreman?
Um,
March 21st, 2025.
I think it's unfortunate, bro.
Yes, sir. He lived to be 76 years old. And
Yeah,
Gene Hackman was 95.
yeah. I wish he could have lived longer.
Yeah, that's kind of old for a boxer, 76. How old was Muhammad Ali when he passed?
I don't know, but Muhammad Ali seemed a lot sicker.
Right, much sicker. We didn't see the ill effects of being a boxing heavyweight or a boxer in general. Um, George Foreman spent less number of rounds in the ring than any fighter because most of his fights never lasted past the first round, like Mike Tyson. I think Mike Tyson is showing more speech effects from being hit than even George Foreman. I don't recall George Foreman having any speech impediments or inability to move. But rest in peace, George Foreman, two-time heavyweight boxing champion of the world, entrepreneur behind George Foreman Grill, passed away at 76. Well done, my faithful servant. The other death is another controversy, Dr. Moore. Angie Stone, the Grammy-nominated R&B singer, songwriter known for songs like "Wish I Didn't Miss You" and "My Sunshine Is Gone." I mean, how did that song go? "My sunshine is here. My there's no more rain in this cloud." That was a favorite song of mine from Angie Stone. Now I didn't know she had a baby with.
D'Angelo.
Did you know that, brother?
Yeah, everybody knew that, bro.
I didn't know that. You know, I ain't up on black topics like that. And
Yeah,
I'm black. I told you I'm really a rich white person in my involuntary regression. I'm a rich white woman in my past life, brother.
yeah. Well, I don't know if that's regression, but that might be progression. You might be a little bit better off as the rich white woman.
Than the shit I'm going through right
Yeah,
now. It worked for me. I'm one of the 1% that it worked for, brother.
yeah, bro. Yeah. So next
What
time
do
you
you
get,
think of Angie Stone? She died at 63, way too young, March 1st, 2025.
yeah,
What did you think about her death? There's even rumors that the music industry tried to get rid of her, brother.
bro. I'm not going to tell you that.
What we're not going to do, brother, is entertain conspiracies in Black mental health and race. If you ever want to catch up on any past episodes, do a hashtag on B as in boy, M as in mental, H as in health, R as in race. Black mental health and race. BMHR. Any Google search on that will pull up all of our content. We are thankful that anybody would listen to this podcast and that we had 25 listeners. We are eternally grateful for. Any other announcements, brother? Oh, Rasul. How can I forget? Member of the Nation of Islam, one of Elijah Muhammad's sons with sisters, Tainetta Muhammad, Rasul Muhammad. They called him Raz. Minister Farrakhan is outliving even the members of his own family and in-law family, brother. I think the minister is now 93 or 94. We just had Savior's Day. Did you get a chance to check it out? I need to check it out myself. But happy Savior's Day and happy Ramadan to all Muslims of the world. Is Ramadan over, brother?
No.
Ramadan Mubarak.
Ramadan Kareem. No, bro. It will either be over Saturday or Sunday night, depending on the moon.
Yes, sir.
Have you been able to fast?
Something like it, brother. Let me explain.
Not one day, my brother. Not one day. I've been eating like a pig on a farm.
It seems like when Ramadan comes around, all your defenses seem to break down, boy. I could eat one meal a day all the time. As soon as Ramadan, we got to do it. There's no compulsion in Islam, but that's when your mind start messing with you, brother. That's that regression.
You sound like the black folks down south when they talk about the devil. Ain't nothing but the devil.
Right. That's exactly what it is. It's nothing but the damn devil, brother.
No, bro. So I mean, for me, Ramadan is easy because I don't break from Ramadan.
Right.
You know,
We have Ramadan all year long. One meal a day, brother.
Right.
Dogs.
Right.
What? Muhammad Ali, renowned American boxer and social activist, passed away on June 3rd, 2016, in Scottsdale, Arizona, at the age of 74, brother. So he was 2 years younger than George Foreman passing. George Foreman is 76. So Muhammad Ali lived a long time, even though he suffered more from Parkinson's disease. May they all rest in peace. Well done, faithful servants. I'm going to put out an hour-long podcast of the podcast we had to get rid of. I did not like the way I sounded kind of juicy on that. Need to pivot backwards, brother.
Pause, brother. Pause.
Pause. Oh, last thing I got to talk about. Big U. Do you know who that is, brother?
What?
Big U, as in Ulysses.
No.
We may have to even talk about Diddy because all of this is mixed together. Eugene Headley Jr., widely known as Big U, a prominent figure in Los Angeles music scene and reputed leader of the Rolling 60s neighborhood Crips, was arrested on March 19, 2025. Federal authorities have charged him with leading a criminal enterprise involved in a range of serious offenses, including murder, human trafficking, robbery, extortion, and fraud.
So what?
And he's 58 years old. He's indicted on 43 counts encompassing violations of racketeering, influence, and corrupt organization, the RICO Act. So Diddy got the RICO Act for being a one-man army with baby oil. But here's a real self-proclaimed gangster, Big U, Eugene Headley Jr., being arrested for racketeering. There's also...
Is this Big U out of California?
You're right, that Big U. The one that said, don't come to California if you're a celebrity and you ain't check in. I think he convinced people that that wasn't just a saying. You don't check in, you may get robbed. I know that this is associated with
talk about regression, right?
We're regretting back to
you 60 years old and you still talking about you a gangster.
Well, now his claim to fame is that when he got out of prison, he worked with Minister Farrakhan and Minister and Captain Youssef, not Captain, Captain Mustafa Farrakhan, to bring the Bloods and the Crips together and to bring the Crips back to community development rather than gangbanging. That was his claim to fame. After he got out of prison, he said that he was reformed. But now they're charging him for them check-ins, brother. Um, they seem to have evidence. Now, you know what happens when they do this type of stuff. Somebody snitched. Somebody did some telling. Because he was supposed to be a positive member of the community now. But I tell you, they're gonna try to put all of us in prison. Um, there's new development in Tupac too. What if you wanted to say any last word on Big U, go right ahead.
No, I don't have any words. I don't really know Big U. I saw him on, if I'm correct, on
DJ Vlad TV.
maybe I saw him on Vlad, but I saw him on I think Drink Champs. And there was
Right, he was on there too.
a couple of them old school dudes that they were bringing on, and they were talking about their gangsterism, from back in the day, but they were still trying to be relevant. And I think what's sad about things like that is, when you are old head and you're the last to know that you're old head,
Hmm.
you still think that you're relevant,
Hmm.
and you don't know that you're not.
Sometimes we need to be quiet and sit down. I think that's what Minister Farrakhan's Savior's Day speech was about. To be silent, have a seat.
Or just to get out the way,
Right.
right? Um,
Is this steam engine going to knock down a lot of people?
I mean,
It's the Make
some,
America Great train, gravy
yeah,
train.
yeah, and I think Mays and Cameron said it best, when they were talking about
I
the
love that
guy.
podcast they got.
Yeah, when they were talking about the guy I think he's from Texas.
Charleston White?
No, it's old, just the older gangster. I forget his name. But
Hmm.
anyway, he was supposed to be checking them, and Mace was like, "What, nigga? We're not your little homies. I mean, what are you talking about? You gonna check for us? Like, what does that mean? He's like, maybe you think you still a gangster." He was
Hmm.
like, but
Ain't
nigga,
nobody scared of you no more.
but nigga, if you a gangster and you 60, you lost.
Hmm.
You lost.
If you ain't learned how to pivot,
You know?
if you didn't redress your grievances,
Yeah, bro. I mean, what are you doing?
you
What are you
still
doing
got
to
beef at this age,
what are
you're
you
gonna
doing with
end
your
up
life?
like Puffy.
What are you doing with your life if you run around at 60 and you still trying to be a gangster?
Hmm.
No, bro, that's not it.
You get RICO charges. That's what happens. That's what the fuck happens when you acting like you are. And you could be hard as you want, but in order to prove it, it's gonna cost you another prison sentence. And if that's not what you want to be associated with anymore, you can't go around threatening people. Just saying, folks, out in the universe, you can play hard all you want, but gangsters have a lifespan, and it ain't good. You're not gonna be tough for the rest of your life. So what are you talking about? So what you saying? Um, Speaking of Vlad TV, we know damn well he's a damn paid informant. He getting paid millions of dollars to get you to go on his show and tell your whole gangster story. Now, all of these people, including Big U, all of a sudden mysteriously has these RICO charges. Talking too much. They're about to put Reggie Wright, Keefe D, Puffy Combs, all on the Tupac murder, from what I hear, brother. But they all got that from the visits on the show of DJ Vlad, allegedly. Let me say allegedly, because I don't know what happened, nor do I want to know. But everything that you wanted to be seen of men for, that type of regression may cost you your freedom, if not something even higher in terms of stakes. Well, brother, I think we talked enough. It's a pleasure to hear from you again, brother. I know we had a long time off, and I'm mostly to blame for that time off, but I had other fish to fry and other heads to box. Um, Hopefully, my enemies and my foes will be put to rest, brother. They've been on me for over 20 years. Well, let's see if I can turn the tables on them. And there's usually no winners when you go up against people like that, but I'm going to be the David against Goliath, brother. I'm going to fight the good fight. Last words, brother. Maybe Dr. Moore. Oh, Dr. Moore got cut off accidentally. Let me resend the yeah, his earphones went out. Let me put them back on. Give me 1 second to re-invite him for last words. You're listening to Black Mental Health and Race. I am your host, MF Doug. My co-host is Dr. Moore. As we close, let me play some of the things, the notes from tonight's episode, and I hope that you all had a chance to get your mind right with tonight's episode and think about sharing this with somebody who may need it more than you.
Here is your scripted version for podcast teleprompter reading, written with your voice in mind, direct, reflective, and motivational. You can read it straight, pause for effect, or use sections to invite audience reflection. Podcast script, Black Mental Health and Race. Episode title, Regression as Resistance, When the Past Fights Your Future, host MF Doug, AF. Welcome back to Black Mental Health and Race. I'm your host, MF Doug, AF. Last episode, we talked about firearms, stress, and poverty, and how those forces shape, stunt, or sometimes suffocate personal growth. That conversation hit. We had over 22 listeners. That's a first for me. Usually it's 3, maybe 5. Now, let me say this clearly. Not every Black person is living in poverty or under the weight of crime, but most of us still carry the effects of those conditions. Even when we escape them physically, we don't always escape them mentally.
Hello?
Sometimes we regress. Today, we're talking about involuntary regression. And when that regression turns into resistance, it becomes a silent form of self-sabotage.
I'm here, bro.
You may think you're stuck because of money or family or the system. But sometimes it's just an old version of you trying to protect you from your own success. So today, I'm giving you a mirror. Let's begin this work together with a self-assessment and worksheet that exposes the pattern and breaks the cycle. Section.
If you're interested in the worksheet for self-assessment on regression, involuntary regression, I'll make it available on my YouTube channel. Look for Bmhr, probably not the first entry, but either the second or the fifth entry for Bmhr, Black Mental Health and Race, on YouTube. Also on Facebook and Instagram, I can be found. Also DFN Universe on Instagram and YouTube. Any thing you want, Dr. Moore, to any links or contacts you want to give out?
No, bro. I'm good.
Yes, sir. Any last words?
Peace to the God.
Peace to the universe. Hola.